18 people. That's how many walked past a dying toddler on a rain-soaked street in southern China. She was hit by a car. 18 people who saw her broken body and kept walking. This is a story about one little girl and how her death forced an entire nation to confront an uncomfortable question. What have we become? This is the case of little Yue Yue. Most people don't expect their lives to change because of one moment, an accident, a mistake that wasn't theirs, a day that starts normal and ends with everything feeling uncertain. When that happens, you're not thinking about lawsuits, you're thinking about pain, medical bills, how long recovery will take, and whether things will ever feel normal again. And in that space, a lot of people stay quiet. They don't ask questions. They don't push back. They assume the system will be fair. But that's rarely how it works. There's a reason you shouldn't hand your future to the same system calculating how much your pain costs them. Just like there's a reason you wouldn't trust your insurance company with your case. That doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And no one should have to carry something this heavy alone. Fortunately, there are people whose entire purpose is to stand between regular families and systems that are built to wear them down. Morgan & Morgan exists for that reason. For more than 35 years, they have fought for the people with no upfront fees and the resources to take on powerful companies when it matters. And this isn't about promises. It's about knowing help is real. If you're ever injured due to someone else's negligence, you deserve to know your options. If you're ever looking for more information, you can check out Morgan & Morgan by going to forthepeople.com/Megan. Their fee is free unless they win. Wang Yue came into the world on June 8, 2009 in Shandong province. Her family called her Little Yue Yue, and from the moment she arrived, she was adored. Her smile could fill a room. Her laughter was infectious. She was the kind of child who made strangers stop and wave. Her father, Wang Chichang, knew struggle. He'd abandoned his studies at agricultural school in 1999, chasing opportunity in Beijing like millions of other rural Chinese. The city chewed him up and spat him out. He drifted from job to job, finding nothing that stuck. Then he met Xu Feifei, a woman with only a junior high diploma, but enough warmth to change his life. In 2003, with help from fellow Shandong villagers, the couple moved to Foshan in Guangdong province. They rented a small space in Block 27 of Guangfu Hardware City and opened a hardware shop. The timing couldn't have been worse. SARS swept through the region, devastating the local economy. Their fledgling business nearly died before it began. But Wang Chichang was nothing if not persistent. He and Qi married that same year and had a son, Wang Shuo. The family lived modestly, crammed in an attic above their shop, the four of them surviving on thin margins and loyal customers. But when little Yue Yue was born in 2009, something shifted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the fortunes began to improve. She felt like a blessing. By 2011, little Yue Yue had just started preschool. She was eager to make friends, always darting outside to play with the neighborhood children. Like many kids in the busy hardware market district, she'd wander to the corner shop alone to buy snacks. The adults were busy working. It was normal. It was safe. Until it wasn't. October 13th, 2011. The afternoon started like any other. Little Yue Yue returned from school and played with her brother while rain hammered the streets outside. Her mother ran upstairs to grab laundry from the line. In that brief moment of distraction, the 2-year-old slipped out the door. The surveillance camera captured what happened next. At approximately 5:25 p.m., little Yue Yue wandered into a narrow market lane, barely visible through the downpour. A white minivan barreled through without slowing. The driver struck her, knocking her small body beneath the front wheels. The van stopped. For one agonizing moment, it seemed like help might come. But the driver never emerged. Instead, he pulled forward, slowly, his rear tires rolling over her tiny frame. Then he drove away. What followed has been seared into the collective memory of China. Little Yue Yue lay in the road, blood pooling around her shattered body. She was still alive, still moving, still hoping someone would notice. And someone did. Many someones. The first was a man in white clothes. He glanced at her crushed legs and walked on. The second rode a motorcycle. He could have rushed her to the hospital in minutes. He turned around and left. The third man stopped and stared, then looked away, as if avoiding her eyes would erase what he'd seen. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, they came and went like ghosts. The eighth was a woman with a little girl, a mother and child, passing another mother's child bleeding on the pavement. They kept walking. The surveillance footage is almost unwatchable. Little Yue Yue squirmed in the rain, her movements growing weaker. Minutes passed. The blood spread. Then a second vehicle approached, a small truck. The driver made no attempt to avoid her. Both front and rear wheels crushed her legs. Still, the parade of indifference continued. People glanced, whispered, pointed. "That's horrible," someone murmured. No one stopped. Chen Xianmei, who was a cleaner, was 58 years old. She earned her living collecting recyclables, riding her bicycle through the market streets with a woven bag. Wrinkled and plainly dressed, she hardly attracted attention, except the occasional sneer for her humble profession. When she pedaled down that narrow lane around 5:30 p.m., she noticed a small crowd gathered, pointing at something on the ground. Her route took her past them, and what she saw stopped her cold. A toddler, soaked in blood, barely breathing. Chen Xianmei didn't hesitate. She dropped her bag and lifted the girl from the asphalt. What she felt made her cry out. Little Yue Yue's pelvis had been destroyed. It felt like it was dissolving in her hands. Blood was coming out of her nose and mouth. Chen later told reporters, "I didn't understand why no one else had carried her from the street. Whose child is this?" she screamed at the bystanders. "Whose child?" No one answered. Finally, a woman came running. Qu Feifei, little Yue Yue's mother. What happened next was captured on video and would be replayed across the nation. Qu fell to her knees, pressing her forehead on the ground at Chen's feet, a gesture of profound gratitude in Chinese culture. Then she collapsed completely, inconsolable, her body limp as loved ones tried to help her stand. Together with Chen, they rushed to the hospital. Little Yue Yue was transferred to Guangzhou Military Region General Hospital on October 14th, and her injuries were catastrophic. CT scans revealed severe brain contusions, skull fractures, and crushing trauma to her chest cavity. Her pupils were fixed and dilated. She showed no response to stimulation. The doctor found her in a deep coma, her life maintained only by machines and medications. And here's what haunts her parents to this day. It wasn't the wheels that killed her. The fatal injury came from that first impact, when her head struck the pavement. The long minutes she spent lying in the rain, waiting for help that never came, allowed her brain to swell beyond saving. The hospital did everything possible. Ventilators, blood pressure medications, surgery to relieve pressure in her skull. The daily cost of treatment exceeded 4,000 to 5,000 yuan. When news of the accident spread online, donations flooded in. Students, overseas Chinese, strangers moved by a tragedy they'd watched unfold on video. The family received over 270,000 yuan in support, but money couldn't repair what had been broken. On October 16th, doctors declared little Yue brain dead. On October 19th, she went into cardiac arrest. They resuscitated her, but her kidneys began failing. In the morning of October 20th, her parents received a final notice. The best possible outcome was now a permanent vegetative state. At 12:32 a.m. on October 21st, 2011, little Yue died. She was 2 years old. The surveillance footage spread across the internet like wildfire. Within days, it had been viewed millions of times. More than 4.5 million posts appeared on Weibo. The world watched, horrified, as 18 people walked past a dying child. The outrage was immediate and intense. Police identified the first driver, Hu Jun, within hours. Knowing he couldn't hide, he turned himself in the next day, accompanied by his father-in-law. The second driver was detained even faster. A man who made a prank call to the grieving father, claiming to be the driver, was also arrested. In September 2012, Hu Jun stood trial. He pleaded guilty to traffic crimes, but denied murder. He was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. The light sentence, reduced because he surrendered and contributed to medical bills, sparked fresh anger. But it didn't end there. Hu Jun appealed, and after reaching a compensation agreement with the family for 303,000 yuan, his sentence was reduced to just 30 months. The second driver was convicted in December 2012 and received a 30-month sentence as well. The reaction online was furious. Just 3 years and 6 months to compensate for a life, one user wrote after the initial sentencing. He ended Xiao Yue's life before she even had time to start living, wrote another. But the real fury was reserved for the 18 passersby. Why didn't they help? To understand what happened on that rain-soaked street, you have to understand what China had become by 2011. 5 years before little Yue's death, a case in Nanjing had sent shockwaves through Chinese society and fundamentally changed how people thought about helping strangers. On November 20th, 2006, a 26-year-old man named Peng Yu saw a 65-year-old woman named Xu Shoulan fall while getting off a bus. Her femur was broken. Peng Yu did what any decent person would do. He helped her up, took her to the hospital, and even contributed 200 yuan toward her treatment. Then she sued him. Xu Shoulan claimed Peng Yu had knocked her down. She demanded 136,000 yuan in compensation. And in September 2007, despite no evidence that Peng had caused the fall, the court ruled against him. The judge's reasoning was chilling. According to common sense, no one would help a stranger unless they felt guilty. The verdict was an earthquake. The message it sent was clear. Helping someone in need could destroy your life. The case exploded across Chinese media. Newspapers ran stories about similar lawsuits. Forums filled with accounts of Good Samaritans being extorted by the people they'd saved. A phrase emerged that captured the national mood. Don't help the elderly who fall. A poll by People's Daily, the state newspaper, found that nearly 90% of respondents said they would refuse to help an elderly person who had fallen down because they feared ending up like Peng Yu. And just 1 month before little Yue's accident in September 2011, China's Ministry of Health released a 41-page document titled Technical Guidelines on Intervention when an old person has fallen down. The guideline was meant to provide medical advice, but buried in its pages was a line that captured how deeply fear had penetrated Chinese society. It advised bystanders not to help them up in a hurry. but to observe and inquire about their health conditions first. Even the government, it seemed, was telling people to be careful about helping strangers. By 2011, helping accident victims had become so risky that a grim pattern emerged. In case after case, Good Samaritans who assisted injured people found themselves blamed for causing the injuries. Some were sued. Some were forced to pay compensation. Some had their lives ruined. The most extreme version of this was a phenomenon that defied belief: hit to kill. Under Chinese law at the time, the compensation for killing someone in a traffic accident was relatively fixed, typically between 30,000 and 50,000 yuan, paid once, and the matter was closed. But if a victim survived with disabilities, the driver could be responsible for their care for the rest of their life, potentially millions of yuan. The math was horrifying in its simplicity. It was cheaper to kill than to maim. Media reports documented case after case of drivers who, after accidentally hitting pedestrians, backed up and ran over them again, deliberately, to ensure they were dead. In one notorious 2008 case caught on video, a driver named Zhao Xiaocheng ran over an elderly grandmother 5 times. He was charged only with negligence, not murder, because his lawyer successfully argued he thought he was driving over a trash bag. He paid about 70,000 yuan in compensation and served 2 years in prison. In 2010, a music student named Yao Jiaxin hit a bicyclist with his car, then returned to make sure she was dead, stabbing the injured woman with a knife. When asked why, he explained, "I thought if the woman survived, she and her family might badger me and my family endlessly for compensation." This was the China of 2011, a society where helping strangers could bankrupt you, where drivers had financial incentives to kill rather than injure, where courts ruled that compassion itself was suspicious. But the legal system was only part of the story. China in 2011 was in the midst of the most rapid economic transformation in human history. In just 3 decades, the country had gone from one of the world's poorest nations to the second largest economy on Earth. Hundreds of millions of people had moved from farms to cities. The old communist slogans, "serve the people, lead a plain, hardworking life," had been replaced by Deng Xiaoping's mantra, "getting rich is glorious." A nationwide survey conducted in October 2011, the same month little Yue died, found that 82% of respondents agreed that China had experienced a significant moral decline over the past decade. More than half didn't believe that following ethical standards was necessary for success. The traditional structures that once governed Chinese society, the work unit that assigned jobs and housing, the neighborhood committees that mediated disputes, the extended families that provided support, had dissolved. In their place was something new. A society of strangers, each pursuing their own interests, bound together by nothing but proximity. Anthropologist Yun Xiangyan, who studied this transformation, noted that Chinese were now dealing with strangers constantly, in cities, in markets, in the anonymous crowds that filled public spaces. But they had no established norms for how to treat these strangers. The old Confucian ethics provided guidance for family relationships, for friendships, for dealings with colleagues. But they were conspicuously silent, as one scholar put it, in matters dealing with complete strangers and the anonymous public at large. The result was a kind of moral freefall. People knew how to be good sons and daughters, good parents, good friends, but good citizens, good neighbors, good strangers. Those rules had never been written. This helps explain what a British journalist found when he investigated the hardware market, where little Yue died. The area was populated almost entirely by internal migrants, families from Shandong, from Henan, from Sichuan, who had come south seeking opportunity. They lived crammed into small spaces above their shops. They worked 16-hour days. They barely knew their neighbors. It's quite sad that we don't really talk to each other, one resident admitted. These weren't bad people. These were exhausted people, isolated people, people who had left their villages, their extended families, their communities behind, and found themselves in a place where no one knew anyone, where everyone was a stranger, where the bonds that once would have compelled someone to help a child in the streets simply didn't exist. In a neighborhood of strangers, no one felt responsible for anyone else's child. This is the uncomfortable truth about the 18 passersby. Most of them weren't monsters. They were ordinary people, caught in a system that had taught them, through court cases, through news stories, through bitter experience, that helping strangers was dangerous. Many of them probably wanted to help. Many of them probably felt sick as they walked past. Many of them probably went home that night and couldn't sleep. But the fear was stronger than the compassion. What if they picked her up and she died? Would they be blamed? What if someone accused them of hitting her? Would they be sued? What if helping her destroyed their family? These weren't hypothetical questions. These were things that had happened to real people, whose stories had been broadcast on television and shared on the internet and discussed in every household in China. Little Yue's father understood this better than anyone. He didn't blame the 18 passersby. If our society continues to be like this, Wang Zhichang told reporters, my child's case won't be the last one. And he was right. In 2014, 3 years after little Yue's death, a man in Guangdong province who had helped an elderly accident victim was accused of causing the fall. Unable to prove his innocence, facing demands for compensation, he killed himself. The system that killed little Yue kept claiming victims long after she was gone. In the weeks following little Yue's death, something changed. A China Youth Daily survey found that 80% of young people had followed the case closely. 88% believed she died because of growing social indifference. 71% said bystanders were afraid of getting into trouble. A Stop Apathy campaign launched nationwide. Officials in Guangdong province convened meetings with legal experts. The conversation turned to law. How do you protect people who try to help? The result was China's first Good Samaritan legislation. On August 1st, 2013, Shenzhen became the first city to enact a law protecting those who assist strangers in emergencies. On October 1st, 2017, a national Good Samaritan provision took effect, shielding rescuers from liability and penalizing those who refuse to help people in clear distress. Little Yue's death didn't just spark outrage, it rewrote the rules. Chen Xianmei, the cleaner who finally stopped, became an unlikely hero. She received praise, donations, and recognition from across China. Government officials sent gifts and letters. But then something cruel happened. Neighbors began accusing her of rescuing the child only to become famous, only for money. A lot of people are now saying that I'm doing it to get famous and to get money. Chen told reporters, tears streaming down her face. Even my neighbors are now saying so. That really wasn't my intention, and I'm so afraid of hearing what people are saying that I don't dare to watch the news. The harassment grew so intense that Chen Xianmei was forced to flee her home in Foshan, retreating to her hometown in the mountainous Yangshan County of Qingyuan. The woman who had shown the most humanity was being punished for it. When asked if she would do it again, knowing everything that would follow, her answer was simple. I would still choose to save the girl. The family faced criticism too. Some accused them of taking the donations and running back to Shandong. But the truth was different. Wang Zhichang had promised that all the leftover donations would go to others in need. The family gave 60,000 yuan to a 25-year-old man with leukemia and 30,000 yuan to an anemic girl, paying forward the kindness they had received. International media covered the story extensively. Asahi TV in Japan produced a special segment. News outlets around the world grappled with the same questions Chinese citizens were asking themselves. But perhaps the most stinging contrast came from Hangzhou, just weeks after little Yue's death. A Chinese woman attempted to kill herself by drowning in a lake. Local bystanders gathered at the water's edge and watched. It was a Uruguayan tourist, Maria Fernanda Gomez Aregui, who finally jumped in and saved her. A foreigner had shown Chinese citizens what their own culture should have taught them. The government awarded her 3,000 yuan and praised her for displaying traditional Chinese virtues. The irony was not lost on anyone. How does a society reach the point where 18 adults walk past a bleeding toddler? What does it take to stop and help? The truth is uncomfortable but important. Indifference isn't unique to any culture or country. Fear of consequences, diffusion of responsibility, the assumption that someone else will act. These forces exist everywhere. Little Yue's story simply captured them with devastating clarity. Her photograph, the one her mother still holds, shows a bright-eyed girl with a wide smile. She loved playing with children her age. She was excited about preschool. She had her whole life ahead of her. She died because 18 people decided it wasn't their problem. But perhaps her legacy is this: millions of people watched that footage and felt something break inside them. They saw what indifference looks like. They didn't like what they saw. And some of them decided that the next time they see someone who needs help, they will be the one who stops. One step, that's all it takes to change someone's fate. The first passerby could have picked her up. The man on the motorcycle could have rushed her to the hospital. Any of those 18 people could have been Chen Xianmei. They chose not to be. Little Yue's story isn't just about tragedy, it's about choice. The choice each of us makes when we see someone in need. It's about the kind of person we want to be and the kind of society we want to live in. The laws have changed, but laws can't create compassion. That has to come from within. So the next time you see someone who needs help, really see them, ask yourself, will you be one of the 18, or will you be the one who stops? The answer matters more than you might think. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.